Hello and welcome to my latest weekly property news from Madison's. Well, of course, Bank of England are due to meet again, the Monetary Policy Committee, on the 23rd of March. Not long to go, just 10 days or 9 days away from when I record this. And there's lots of caution in the market as to whether they should increase rates again. So bank base rate, really important rate in our economy. It controls much of what mortgage rates are lent at and indeed lots of other consumer credit lending rates as well. So if anybody has a mortgage, unless you're on a fixed rate, if base rate rises, you will feel that because the banks tend to follow, on a tracker it will follow it purely, but even on a variable rate, the banks tend to have to increase their rates depending on what happens with bank base rate. Now they forecast a lot of what will go on with that. They predict, they look at what's called the 5-year swap rate and work out what they think rates will get to when they're putting together their latest rates. And of course, rates have been going up since February of last year. So back in January 2022, interest rates sat at 0.5%. Can you even believe that? And then the Bank of England started to very cautiously rise it because inflation started to rise. So back in January of last year, inflation was at 5%. That is still high. So typically our inflation rate in this country should sit at around 2% plus our GDP. So that should be about 4.5%. So 4.5% for our interest rates, 2%-ish for inflation. So basically sitting at 5% was high. So Bank of England getting a little bit worried, had to control that. All this extra money been pumped into the economy from the pandemic, hadn't been able to spend, suddenly lockdown releases. We have money, £150 billion in our bank accounts as we came out of lockdown, excess to spend. So too much money going into the economy, too few goods. And of course the war in Ukraine, it compounded everything. So inflation started to roar away and Bank of England control that by increasing base rate, and that gives you less money in your pocket to spend because your debt's more expensive. So they started to do small tweaks, 0.25%, 0.25 or 25 bips as they call it in the banking world, small rate rises until we hit that June to August rise where they went up by 0.5%, and every rise since then has been at 0.5%. We now sit at 4%. Will it go to 4.5% next week or week after? Probably is my gut feeling. So inflation is still sitting at 10.5%. It's too high. Down from its peak in October of over 11%, but still just too high. And they need to really, really get that down. And I don't know if people are particularly feeling the effects. There's definitely in the property market. Zoopla came out with their latest house price data, and they say you could look at what's going on in the property market in two ways: glass half full, glass half empty. So let's look at the glass half empty. If you looked at current trends, there's a graph you can see on your screen now. If you looked at current trends, looked at demand, some number of sales agreed, flow of new supply, stock of homes for sale. If you look at that purple chart on that purple bar on that chart, that is comparing all of those dials to this time last year. So all down, demand down, sales agreed down, stock of new homes available up, so more homes available to buy. But if you look at that black bar, that is comparing it to pre-pandemic years. So that's your glass half full. If you compare it to pre-pandemic years, then actually not looking too bad, better than a pre-pandemic normal market. The last 2 years have been crazy. So property market has definitely slowed down. It's acting normally. Sellers are having to accept on average 4.5% below asking price. That equates to an average of £17,000. So you are seeing that filter through. So the property market is calming, just spending on the wider high street that probably needs to calm as well. So let's see what happens there. Well, of course, one thing that's all making us feel a lot poorer at the moment, in addition to our mortgage rates, is our energy costs. So energy costs really climbing up. They are most of us feeling the pinch, this cost of living crisis. So there's been increased attention onto what makes something a really energy efficient home. It's EPC rating. And an EPC rating of an A can be really, really difficult to get. You've got to do quite difficult things to get that. So you've got to basically have ground source heat pump or air source heat pump. You've got to have solar panels. You've got to have a heat recovery system. You've got to really address the fabric of your building. You're going to struggle to get that with a period property, Victorian, Georgian, Edwardian. The most they will ever get to with a good day is a C. Could normally sit around a D, often an E. Changing things like doing things with your lighting can really improve. That doesn't affect the fabric of the building. You can't often cavity insulate because they've not got cavity walls. You're stuck with those lovely sash windows often, which is a real dilemma, isn't it? They look beautiful, but aren't great. I lived in a 1920s property until recently, and the subfloor ventilation on that was amazing. So it had kind of this void beneath the ground. No matter what we did to that property, we did actually cavity wall insulate it. It just had cavity walls. Double glazed it, put insulation in the loft everywhere, but that heat coming through that void in the floor, oh my gosh, it was cold, always cold. So yeah, really difficult to get a really high energy efficiency rating unless you build from new, which of course many of you know I am doing. I'm building in ICF, a modern building technique. My heating costs should be almost minimal, nothing. If you go into my build now and it's been cold, it is freezing when you step inside that building. It insulates both ways, hot and cold. So temperature can suddenly lift. I go into my build, it feels like a freezer, and that shows it's insulating both ways. So yeah, do check out my regular blogs on my build. Another thing I'd love you to check out for us is our glorious Mother's Day window. So Millie in my team, she's wonderfully talented. She painted beautiful windows throughout the pandemic, and we've got a gorgeous one sat behind the camera now. It's two beautiful big wings. You can come and have your picture taken, post it, and have the opportunity to win a bottle of Chapel Down Bubbles, which I always think is well worth the entry. So do please head down to our window, take a picture, send it to your mum. They are stunning and look really, really great. And just to end, two lovely properties that I've launched in the St John's area, both on Somerset Road, similar price point, 875 versus 825, one slightly bigger than the other, but they are both really great family homes, perfect for the grammar school catchments, lovely accommodation, beautifully presented, nice secluded gardens, well worth a look. So if either of those of interest, please give us a call. Have a great week. I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.